Hi everyone. I'll give folks a few minutes to get settled if they're going to be watching the live version of this. Welcome to the Summer of Magic. I'm Marissa Lovett. I'm going to be talking today about working with plant spirits and flower divas. And I will be looking down a few times at my notes. I'll also be trying to answer your questions in the comments as I see them. Hi, Kirsten. And if for some reason I don't see your question, I will go back and answer it later in the comments section. So I just want you to know that, I want to make sure I get to any questions or comments that you might have. So I think since I have a lot to talk about today, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So if you're in a place where you can be comfortable, just close your eyes just for a moment. I'm going to do a little something to open sacred space. So, let me just introduce myself real quickly. I'm Marissa Lovett. I've been a shamanic practitioner since the mid-90s, so for about 20 years. What I love doing, what my great passion is to empower shamanic healers and dreamers with shamanic skills, and to especially help them build great relationships with helping spirits. And I do that through dream work and through coaching and with a little bit of shamanic healing. And one of my absolute most favorite things to talk about is plant spirits, which is why I'm thrilled to be talking to all of you today. So let me just say hi. Hi, Lena. How are you? Patricia, how you doing? So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So how did I get into all of this? I discovered plant spirit medicine during a crisis. I had a health problem in the 90s that went undiagnosed for over a decade. And I had very powerful reactions to foods, herbs, medications. So my problem was very difficult to treat. And in desperation, I turned to shamanic practices, shamanic journeying. And along the way, I began to notice not only that my quality of life began to improve when I journeyed, but I also noticed that I actually had some health improvements. Some little miniature miracles happened, which made my health situation a lot easier for my doctors to treat. So around the time that I discovered plant spirit medicine, I had been working long distance with a wonderful shamanic counselor named Dale Robinson, who is associated with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. And he suggested that since I live in Florida, which is a place which has an all-year-round growing season, that I should try to get to know everything in my yard that was a plant. And this felt overwhelming because I live in a place, at the time we had a yard that didn't have grass in it. It had all weeds that we would mow and many different species of trees. So there was going to be a lot to get to know there. And at the same time, what was happening was that I discovered the book Plant Spirit Medicine by Elliot Cohen. And after reading his book and listening to what Dale had taught me, I decided I was going to try to get to know the spirits of some of the citrus trees in my yard, specifically the grapefruit tree and the lemon tree. So I did the instructions in his book. I ate a little piece of the edible part of the plant, the fruit of the grapefruit and the fruit of the lemon, individually, and I did individual journeys to the lower world, which is a shamanic practice, to meet with the spirit beings associated with these plants. And I did one for each plant. And I received a lot of information, songs, little chants to work with them. And I immediately started to feel spiritually more connected to these plants. But what happened that was sort of a miracle was that about a month later, I was able to take an herbal formula that I had been sensitive to in the past that had bioflavonoids from lemon. So immediately, I began to take herbs that had a lot of vitamin C in them. And these were herbs that I badly needed, but that I had not been able to tolerate before I began to connect with the spirits of the citrus trees. So this was a powerful enough improvement for me to really propel me into plant spirit medicine. And I began to really want to get to know these wonderful beings that live with us in the middle world and that we can connect with in the other world to receive their blessings. So I'm going to talk today about kind of 3 different areas. The first is getting to know plant spirits in the middle world. The second area is journeying and doing shamanic practices in the other world. And the last area I'm going to talk about is teacher plants and actual doing healing work with these. So I'm going to get started now with working with plants in the middle world. Which is the world we live in right now. And just to make this hopefully not too confusing, when shamanic practitioners talk about the other world, some of them divide the worlds into 3 parts. The middle world, which is the conscious world we all live in. The upper world, which is where you go to meet deities and teachers. And the lower world, where you might connect with plants or animals or other beings and the ancestors. And this changes from culture to culture. So, middle world is where we get to use our physical senses and our psychic senses simultaneously. So I started to become very interested in wildflower divination. I actually got into this by accident while walking in the park. If you've ever heard or seen the movie Spinal Tap, there's a song that they, in the movie, called Listen to What the Flower People Say. And while I was walking in the park, I kept hearing this song, Listen to What the Flower People Say. And eventually I realized that what that song was trying to get me to do was wildflower divination, which I didn't know anything about. And what wildflower divination is a way of working with the color and shape and even sometimes the family of a flower to understand what a person needs. It's very closely related to flower healing and to flower essences. And it's also a sort of simplified version of the doctrine of signatures, where there's a sort of secret code about the helpful qualities of a plant in its appearance. So what I began to connect with was the colors, and that the colors of a plant have or of the flower, have a deep connection to its spiritual energies. So, for example, you might take a look at 2 flowers, red roses and white lilies. In the color symbolism, red is very strongly connected to the first chakra, to energy, to passion, and white is strongly connected to more spiritual or purity. And what's interesting is, at the same time I was learning about these things, I began to realize that there was a connection to both the flower essence interpretations of these colored flowers and something called Victorian flower language, which was an old-fashioned way of communicating emotions through bouquets of flowers. So, to take, for example, the red roses, these in Victorian flower language combine the symbolism of red with the rose to indicate passion or romantic feelings. White lilies, on the other hand, represent purity, and that was one reason why you might see them during certain spiritual holidays. And where you see these 2 flowers combined is in the Rider-Waite Tarot in the Magician card, where the magician has the red roses, the drive to follow his heart, and the white purity to have the focused intent. Because it turns out that Waite, who created that deck, actually had an interest in wildflower readings. and had a very elaborate system of wildflower divination. So that was a physical way of connecting with the plants. But then I began to connect with them on the spiritual level, using my senses. And two ways I discovered that were relatively easy to connect with flowers was through my clairvoyant vision and through my hands. So, for example, when you're looking at a flower blossom, it's not unusual to see like what might look like a globe of energy around the flower. Many people see this, or they might see rainbows. Some people might see little beings. And this represents, or I began to learn that this represents the Deva, or spirit of the flower, and is a visual way of communicating with it. On the other hand, you can, if you're more of a kinesthetic psychic like I am, you can put your hands around the blossom. Don't touch it physically, but just touch the energy around it. And the energy of the plant will begin to communicate with you that way. And between these two ways of working, I began to realize that I could learn about a plant without reading about it. And then I could go and take what I learned about the plant, the colors, the shape of the plant, and I could go and take that knowledge and match that against what other people had experienced and written about in books. And it began to be a way to directly learn from the spirits of nature, which is an important part of shamanic practice. It doesn't mean that you apply that knowledge without checking it out with other people. It just means that you develop your own connection with the plant first before you go to consult with other people about how it can be used. And that turned out to be very important for me. The other thing that happened to me was that while I was going around and discovering different plants, I began to discover that some of the plants I was the most attracted to turned out to be not only attractive to bees or butterflies, but they also turned out to be powerful healing herbs that native people knew about in my area, but that I had never learned about. And so the plants and the flowers became a way of introducing me to an herbal ally that I might not have learned about otherwise. So that was a very exciting way to get to know the plants spiritually while interacting with them in the physical world. And when we go into the part next about shamanic states of trance, I'll talk a little bit more about relating what you receive in trance to your experience of being out in your garden or in nature, because not everybody experiences shamanic trance the same way. And so I don't want to limit this to certain practices. So let me just see if I can see some questions now. Hi, a little late here. Hope I didn't miss too much. No, don't worry. You didn't miss hardly anything. I was just basically introducing my story and talking a little bit about working in the middle world with ordinary consciousness with plant spirits. So now we're going to talk about the exciting part, which is shamanic trance states. Shamanic trance states are very powerful because it allows ordinary people or shamanic practitioners to interact with the consciousness of plants. Plants are some of the oldest beings on the planet. They were alive much longer than animals. They have a great wisdom and a great ability to guide us and to see the long view. And many of the people who introduced plant spirit healing and plant spirit medicine to the West, like Elliot Cohen or Pam Montgomery, who I'll be talking about later, really talk about that the important thing about working with plant spirits isn't just that they can help us heal. It's that they really help us to understand our place on the planet. And they help us to have the long view. They help us to have patience and to really see that we belong here. And they're kind of like a type of elder, like a non-human elder that we can interact with in a relatively easy way. So, what are the different kinds of shamanic trance state that people have frequently used to interact with the plant kingdom. And whatever I'm going to say, just adapt this to your own practices. So the first one is what I described earlier, the lower world journey. This is a journey where you set out with your intent, either with a rattle, a drum. Some people use song to get yourself into a trance state of consciousness where, along with your spiritual helpers, you enter the lower world. And the lower world is entered by a tunnel, which is a natural hole in the ground. Some people see a cave, some people see a spring, some people go down through the roots of the trees. It doesn't matter how you get there. What matters is that you go down with intent, meet your helping spirits that you trust implicitly, and then go with those spirits to the realm of the plant beings so that you can meet a particular plant spirit and learn from it. And in these divinations, it's very common to eat a piece of the edible portion of the plant. It can be a very small piece before you do the journey. It's part of your intention to go into the lower world and learn from this plant. And when you're there, it's very common you may see the plant in the same form as you see it in ordinary consciousness, but you may see it in a different form. Some people see the plant as a person, some people see animals. It's the plant spirit and consciousness that you're learning from. And the plant will begin to talk to you and tell you how you can deepen your connection to it, how it may want you to work with it. It may want you to drink it if it's edible as a tea, or to eat it for a period of time, concentrating on that plant and focusing on it. It may give you a song. It's very, very common to have healing songs. Some of these have words and some do not. It may tell you a way of transmitting its gifts to either yourself or to other people in a healing ceremony. These are all very common experiences that people have with plant spirits. And the easiest and most common way that most people learn to shamanically journey, which is to go into the other world with intent, is to do this sort of classic lower world journey. There are other shamanic practitioners who go into what we would call the middle world in spirit form with their helpers and work with a specific plant that's in a location. Sometimes this is just to find the plants where they grow. Other times this is to learn from the plant spirit in a more practical way that has to do with this world. There are some traditions that also see plants in the upper world, in the upper world kingdoms, but there are fewer of those than the lower world journey, in at least my experience with this. So it doesn't really matter where you go in the other world. It just matters that you go with intent. You go with your trusted spiritual helpers. It helps to eat a little piece of the plant before you go, and that you want to learn, that you're open to deepening your relationship with the plants. Because even though we as shamanic practitioners get really caught up in techniques, the technique that matters the most in successful shamanic work is the depth of our relationship to our helping spirits. So the more you know about that plant, the stronger your rapport with it, the more powerful your healing work is going to be with that plant. And that's sort of like the little secret of shamanism that people don't always talk about, because we do get caught up in ceremonies and rituals and techniques because they're wonderful. So let me see if there's any questions I can see here. Can you use a rain stick? Oh, yes, absolutely. It doesn't matter. Use the method of trance work that's most familiar to you, that works to you, especially to get started. And use the helping spirit that you're most, that you have the best rapport with. Like if you work with an animal, or if you work with an archangel, or it doesn't matter who you work with. They just have to be a trustworthy guide, because what they're going to do sometimes is help you to interpret what you learn from the plant. Because sometimes when you're first getting started, some things the plants tell you may not make sense, and you may need a little bit of an interpretation to, or just to experience it before you can apply it. The other really interesting plant spirit trance state that some people do, and this is Cindy Dale teaches this, and this is more related to traditions where what you do to access shamanic trance states is to go into other dimensions. So, for example, a person can look like they're quietly standing there, and what they're really doing is accessing their shamanic helpers, going into very other dimensions, working with helping spirits, but they're not drumming, they're not rattling, they just look like they're standing there. So this technique, what you do is you use the breath to expand your energy field out until you touch the plant. So this can actually be done when you're standing in the wild or in your garden and you want to interact with a plant on the spiritual level. So for example, you just would breathe in and then exhale out. And in some traditions, you might actually, like Christina teaches a technique where you actually push out your energy field. Some of the Andean teachers will teach a technique where you go up and sort of open the energy field like a fan around you. So it doesn't really matter. It just matters that you experience that expansion of your energy field, going out, touching the plant. And when you do that, your energy field will begin to connect with the energy field of the plant, and you'll begin to learn. Once you do this, it's pretty easy to find that plant spirit again in whatever shamanic trance state you practice when you're in the woods or in your garden. So I'm just offering that out as an alternative trance state as opposed to journeying, because some people don't dream, so don't journey. The third way is dreaming, and conscious dreaming is very powerful. If you're going to try this and you're a heavy sleeper who has trouble lucid dreaming, I would recommend that you try this right before you fall asleep, or even, I did this the first time in the afternoon when I was a little bit drowsy, but I didn't think I was going to fall asleep. And what you do is, once again, with intent, you eat a piece of the plant, and then you lie down or get comfortable in whatever way that will help you sort of half asleep, because you're going into a hypnagogic state. You can even put a piece of the plant in a bag under your pillow if you want, or on your person. And basically, you're just going in. You can visualize the plant, and you'll begin to sort of half fall asleep and dream. And then what will happen is the plant will begin to talk to you. It will give you images from the dream world. And then because you're half asleep, you can kind of go in again and ask another question or ask for clarification. And once again, the dream will come back and talk to you. And this is a way of sort of lucid dreaming without trying to control what's happening so much that you don't get a chance for the spirits to kind of engage back with you. And it's a very easy way to learn lucid dreaming. And then, once you've done that for long enough, you can either fall asleep and just let yourself have a dream, or you can fall asleep and then wake up in the dream if that's your practice, if you have a lucid dreaming practice. So those are some trance states that you can use to learn about plant spirits. So let me see what... I used to dream a lot, but find it hard to remember. Well, sometimes the very fact that you're asking a specific question and you're going in with your helping spirits and you're setting all that intent by eating a piece of the plant, sometimes doing all that will help you to recover part of the dream that you wouldn't normally recover. And also going in on the hypnagogic level, it's much easier to remember what you've experienced. And the nice thing about the hypnagogic state is it really gets you out of your mental body and really into journeying and really into interacting with the real spirits. So that's the great advantage, I think, of that technique. But they're all good. you just pick the one that works for you. So let me see. I almost never dream, or at least I never remember them. Yeah, I mean, dreaming is one of those things you have to coax, you have to nurture it a little bit. But there are ways to work with it. Some people also recommend smelling clary sage essential oil before sleeping. I have mixed results with that, but some people find it to be really helpful. The best results I had is to set an intention that I used to use an affirmation, I will remember my dreams and their meaning will be clear to me. And that helped me a lot. Plus asking questions of my dreams, that helped a lot too. So I hope some of those might be helpful. Another thing you can do is to drink a glass of water about 2 hours before you sleep with lemon, because it's a physical purification. And if you give your body a chance to, visit the restroom a couple of times, you will find that helps you to have a more powerful dream. So that can help too. Let's see here. I had a friend tell me once that right before you lay your head down, take a sip of water and state, I will remember my dream. And as soon as you wake up, take another sip and you will be able to remember. Yeah, I've worked with that one too. I think that can be helpful because you're working with water, which as an element tends to encourage intuition and emotion and dreams. So yeah, using nature as an ally is always helpful. I also use stones. I have a specific crystal that its job is to help me remember my dreams, and I work with it in a specific way. So, and some people, I use jade as a stone. I've used quartz crystals as dream stones. So you can also use crystals. They help too. Yeah, Lang, yeah, Lena, yeah, that's wonderful. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about teacher plants, because when a lot of people hear about plant spirits, the first thing they think of is ayahuasca, or if they know a little bit more, they might think of peyote or magic mushrooms. But there's like a whole class of what we might call teacher plants. And in indigenous cultures, the way the people look at the plant people is they tend to divide them into categories based on their relationships with them. So for example, there might be plants that are beautiful to look at. Then there are plants that are good to eat, that help nourish our bodies. There might be plants that are good to heal our bodies. They bring us back into wholeness, physically and even emotionally. And then there are these teacher beings, these teacher plants, which in some traditions even have like a spiritual origin that might even be extraterrestrial in some traditions. So the teacher plants are powerful not just in their ability to heal, but in their ability to transmit or network with other plants. And this is pretty much true across the board, whether you're talking about tobacco, San Pedro cactus, peyote, magic mushrooms, fly agaric. Most of these plants, even coca, most of these plants have a way of talking to other plant beings. And they tend to be either hallucinogens or stimulants. That's sort of their class as, plant drugs or whatever. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences with Wachuma, which is the San Pedro cactus. So let me just see if there's a question here. I've been keeping a dream journal on my nightstand, and I've noticed the more I use it, the more details I remember. Yes, the more you honor your dreams by remembering them, the more you will remember them. I keep a written journal on my phone, and I also have a dream crystal that I blow my dreams into every day. So between those two things, I think it's helped me to remember my dreams better. That's a great idea, yeah. So with these teacher plants, like this San Pedro cactus, it's really important to develop a relationship with them that goes beyond the physical. And I'll give you an example of what that might look like. I learned how to prepare San Pedro cactus tea when I was in college. And yes, it was a powerful hallucinogen. It definitely opened me up spiritually. It helped me. I think it helped me to get past my rational mind and my beliefs that I couldn't experience the same things that Native people experience. So I think it was helpful, but I really needed to work with a maestro, someone who had really studied the tradition before I really began to understand the San Pedro cactus at all. And the person I worked with was a Peruvian healer named Don Teo Paredes, who had worked with San Pedro for many years. And the way he worked was he would work in ceremony with a group of people. We would all take the plant. We might take other plants, like a type of tobacco that comes from the Amazon, to enhance the plant spirit. But what we would be doing is he would be singing healing songs. And as he sang these songs, we would go in to a trance state, and we would remember and interact with past hurts, or helping spirits, or messages about our future, or messages from our heart about things that were important to us that we didn't realize were important. And this happened to everyone who experienced this. And then after the ceremony, the plant, the cactus, became a type of spirit guide that we could continue to work with, whether we were taking the plant or not taking the plant. And one of the other things that happened was he could use the plant as a healing, because San Pedro has a reputation for opening up vision, a clairvoyant vision. So, for example, he would have a person stand in the middle of the room. It was dark or dimly lit. And while he was working on the person healing, he would ask us if we could see where in their energy field the problem was. And so we would all yell out where we thought the problem was. And in this, we were using the San Pedro to help us learn a little bit about the energy field. Also, many times I have experienced Wachuma, or San Pedro, as a sort of networker for other plants. In other words, if I'm going to do healing work with somebody, once I received a healing song to work with the San Pedro cactus, I was able to work with this song to ask other plants to come and to work with me. So in other words, the teaching plants can sometimes be like a form of gatekeeper. So for example, it's not uncommon for people to use tobacco to call another plant, or ayahuasca, or San Pedro. I think it even happens with coca. And Elliot Cohen, who does plant spirit medicine and teaches it, says that he uses an actual homeopathic remedy of a plant to basically be the carrier for any plant spirit he's going to use in a healing. So I just wanted you to get an idea of how profound the teaching plants can be and what they do, what their jobs are. And the other thing that was very important in this process was I began to learn that I could work with stones to connect with plant energies, particularly quartz crystals. They're really good. So what I would do is I would take the crystal, I would put the crystal in the energy field of the plant, not touching it. So remember when I talked about the flower, how the flower kind of has a globe of energy around it? I would touch that crystal to that globe of energy and pray and ask the plant to bless the crystal. And then I would have that energy, that spiritual energy within the crystal. And I could either use that as part of a healing, directly put that on my body or the person's body, or transmit it into a glass of water and drink it. This actually is a real method of making flower essences that the man who made Cordyfy, the Amazon orchid essences, he used that technique because he couldn't, the flowers were endangered, and he couldn't just go and pick them and do what, regular flower essence people do. So let me just take a break here and see a comment. My husband started growing inside first because we were in Georgia and the high humidity outside was too much. Then we moved to the desert in California, and the outside environment was perfect for it. Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, any plant that you want to get to know better, it's really helpful if you can either grow it, be with it in the wild, or even if you can just have a piece of it, like a seed that you can put on your altar. It just really helps to have a physical representation of the plant while you're working with it spiritually. Yeah, that's really important. And I know many herbalists either grow the herbs they want to learn about, or they visit them in the wild for a long time before they ever start really working with them. One of the other things that the teacher plants do is they help you to hunt for a song. You don't have to have a teacher plant to do this. One of the most common teacher plants that people don't even recognize is tobacco, and it's accessible to most people in our society. And just leaving tobacco as an offering is a way to work with it, as a way to introduce yourself to a plant spirit. So you don't even have to smoke the tobacco if you don't want to. But while doing this, while introducing yourself to the plant spirit, the plant may give you a song, or it may ask you to hunt for one. And the way I was taught to hunt for a song, I use a rattle. You could just as easily whistle. You could use a drum. It doesn't matter how you do it. But you want to get yourself into a trance state. And then what will happen is the plant will come to you and you'll start to hear something. What happens to me sometimes is that I used to get words a lot, but now I hear a melody that I'm whistling. Or sometimes the plant jumps into me if I'm close enough to it, and the whistling just comes out. So I'm just trying to describe different ways of doing it so that you understand that there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just want to have a working relationship with this plant. That's the important thing. And a song can be a very powerful way to do this. Just to kind of give you an idea about how this can work, I'm going to demonstrate real quickly my song for the elder plant. And I'm just going to show you a little bit about how that can be worked with. You can also take that song that you've worked with and you can use it for self-healing. So, for example, in the morning, if I want to work with elder, what I might do is do that song that I just did, and then I'll breathe into my heart and breathe out into my palms like this. And the palms are a connection to a part of the energy field that transmutes negative energy. So the elder helps me during the day if I'm letting my empathic boundaries down. It just helps give me a little bit of protection and helps release any negativity, any places where I might be stuck. And I'm going to talk about this a little later right now when I'm going to talk about actual healing, because this is the fun part, getting to use the plant spirits. So how do we use the plants to heal? Once you've developed that all-important relationship with the plant, then what you learn to do is to effectively transmit that energy to the people you're working on or to yourself. So if you already work with a teacher plant, you might consult with that teacher plant as to the best way to work with a new plant spirit, or at least have it be part of the process. But for example, with this elder, I might do one of two things. I use the breath often. That breath that I was telling you about, where you inhale into the heart, or there's another more powerful one where you inhale into the solar plexus like this, and go in through that way. That's a little more powerful. But and those breaths, that breathing technique is taught by Puma Quispe, one of the Andean teachers. But you can combine that with Florida water, or with tobacco, or you can just use the breath by itself. You can do it in person, or you can do it distantly. It doesn't matter. I've had success in both ways, and many other people have also. You can also work with feathers, songs. People work with, sometimes they use stones that have a deep connection to the plant. Some people work with the actual, like they may have a bag that they put the plant into. For example, another plant that I work with is a daisy flower called Biden's Alba. It's a plant in my area that fights colds and infections, and it heals ground, and it's very attractive to pollinators. So you can see it has kind of a strengthening, healing energy to it. So I have a bag that I put a dried piece of it, and you probably can't see it, but it's inside here. And I might lay the bag on the person if I'm working with them in person, like on a chakra or a part of the energy that needs work. But you can use breath or many feathers or any other way you would normally work, and just enhance it with your connection to the plants. And you can work with any plant that has asked you or volunteered to help you build a relationship, a healing relationship. Because every plant doesn't do the same thing. And your relationship with the plant may be unique. For example, you may work with it on the physical level as a tea, and someone else may work with it as on the spiritual level. Also, another way I work with plants is if I'm going to make a tea. Let's say I'm going to take elder tincture and put 15 drops in a glass of water. I will sing my song or blow the spirit into that water before I drink it, because I believe that if I'm working on the spiritual and physical levels simultaneously, I have a much better results. So it doesn't shut out the physical. It just isn't limited by it. Another way I work is something called green breath, which is a practice that was introduced by Pam Montgomery, who wrote the book Plant Spirit Healing. What she does that's really interesting is she basically observes the natural process that we go through all the time and makes it conscious. Every breath, we're breathing in what plants exhale. And every time we exhale, they're breathing in what we have, they're inhaling what we exhaled. So there's a natural rapport that's always going on between us and the plant kingdom. So this green breath practice is a way of consciously bringing the helping spirit of a plant into each of our chakras while breathing in and breathing out. You may use music, meditation. I use my helping songs. That's the way it works for me the best. And at some point, you sort of merge completely with the plant spirit. And you can do this individually. You can do this for another person. You can assist them in doing it. Or you can do a group doing it. And it's very powerful. Many healings happen and many transformations happen. And this doesn't have to happen with a teacher plant. This can happen with something like elder, which is an herb. So it just shows that all the plants are powerful healers. And for me, what's been very exciting is that I found that as we merge with the plant, it goes through not only the blockages we have in our energy field, but it really connects with that first layer past the etheric body, which is connected to the environment and the ancestors. And if you have any kind of family karma, that plant just helps blast right through that in a really safe and gentle way. So that's been where I've seen some of the biggest miracles with green breath, is working with family karma, both for myself and other people. So it's a type of limpia or cleansing. It's very gentle. Or there are some people who work with it where they're taking what they would call like an elixir of the plant, which would be like a combination of a tea and a flower essence that's been blessed with the spirit of the plant. And they're doing this process. And, you know, that then it becomes more like an ayahuasca ceremony. It's much more powerful that way. But even doing it just as a practice or in a healing session, I've found great benefits from it. So we're about at 1:15 now. I want to see if I can look through any of the questions here before we get to move on. It says right here, so much amazing information. Thank you. I love learning more about energetics and plants as well. Oh, wonderful, Adrienne. That's wonderful. That makes me very happy. Yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful way to get in touch more powerfully with your garden. Like if you're a gardener, I have plants in containers. I don't even have a real garden. And I have a lot of weeds in the front yard. And this has given me a way to get to know them and to talk to them every day and to experience their community. So it's a beautiful way to work, I think. So just to kind of review a little bit, basically this practice involves you can get to know the plant on the physical level through its color, through its shape, through its symbolism, and with your psychic senses, either seeing that globe of energy, the deva around a flower, or putting your hands around the energy of a flower. You can use shamanic trance states like journeying to the lower world, journeying to the middle world, dream work, or going in, expanding your energy field out while you're standing next to a plant so that your energy field merges with the energy field of the plant. Teacher plants are very powerful, sacred, and helpful, but it really helps if you have a guide, someone who actually understands the plant, if you want to connect deeply with the medicine. But they're very powerful. And these plant spirits are wonderful healers that anyone who develops a relationship with can use safely to benefit your life and to benefit your loved ones, to benefit the earth. Because as Elliot Cohen says, the plants are here not just to heal us, but to welcome us into the dream of nature. So let me just take a break here, take a breath, and see where we're at. So as I do, I have a garden. All my plants are in containers on my balcony or inside. Yeah, I've been doing that for years also. And the beautiful thing about plant spirit medicine is the plants want to work with you. They'll work with you on any level. They'll work with you if you only can put a seed on your altar. You know, they will find a way to communicate. This was a beautiful teaching. Thank you. Did you say that plants have a spirit? If plants have a spirit, when they die, does that spirit stay around? Okay, this is one of the things about shamanic work that's a little different. In the shamanic world, when you interact with the spirit of elder, you're interacting with all elders everywhere that have ever been, that will ever be. So it's kind of like the collective spirit of elder, if that makes sense. You can work with the individual spirit of a plant, but when I've seen people do that, it tends to be more diagnosing, like this plant is out of balance, what does it need, you know, or what is this plant telling me about what the other plants need, or something like that. But when you're working with plant spirit medicine, you tend to be working with the collective spirit of all, like the spirit of all ayahuasca or the spirit of all tobacco plants. So I hope that answers your question. I definitely keep in mind the idea to keep seeds. Thank you. Yeah, I do it. That's a wonderful thing. And it's good to bless your seeds before you plant them. So if you have an altar, that's a very powerful practice. Or to bless your herbs before you make them into remedies. That's another thing. If you're going to make physical remedies like tea and tincture and things like that. So I just wanted to take a few moments before I answer any more questions. Well, let me just see if there's one more. What are some good, easy plants to start with to assist in a healing practice to heal others? Okay, I would stick to the ones you have a really strong rapport with. For example, I started out with cayenne and elder because cayenne and elder are the plants that I get along with the best physically. In other words, if I have a health problem, I tend to go to them first. It doesn't always work that way. One thing I'm going to be telling you about is a free gift that I'm going to be offering if you choose to sign up, which will give you a little bit of a guided way to interact with a plant spirit that you may not know, or to deepen your relationship with a plant spirit if you don't already know how to do it. The other way, though, is that sometimes plants will show up in your dreams. If you have cards, like you're a card reader, you'll keep seeing them over and over again. They'll become like stalker plants. But, you know, they find different ways to communicate with you. If you're growing them in your garden, put your hands around them, or look at them if you're clairvoyant, or listen to them if you're clairaudient, and see which ones talk to you the most easily. Sometimes they're good to start with. Even if you don't work with them as a healing practice, they may guide you to other plants that you will. So those are ways that I have found that are helpful. But the classic way is to find a plant that's edible, eat a small piece of it, and do one of those trance state practices that I described earlier. Classically, the lower world journey. Most people do. But it's not the only way. What is the best way to deal with plants that are not to your liking, or plants and trees that invoke negative feelings within yourself? Sometimes, like if you have sometimes there are trees that have not been treated well. Like I've experienced this more with trees. And you can actually, if you leave a little tobacco for them and tell them that you want to be in better relationship with them, they will actually start to communicate with you and tell you what they need, even if it's for you to back off. They'll tell you. On the other hand, nuisance plants. I'm lucky I have a really great herbalist teacher who basically said, if you're going to remove a nuisance plant, thank it for its sacrifice, and explain to it why you're doing it before you remove it. You know, don't just like rip it out of the ground. This is what she taught us. And some of these nuisance plants actually have healing abilities. So, but you know, like we have a plant here called potato vine, and it kills everything. So, you know, we have to remove it or clip it sometimes. Also, caterpillars take care of it. So, the other thing you can do that really helps is, because tobacco is for the Americas, is such a universal sort of way of introducing yourself, lay some tobacco down and ask, how can this area come more into harmony? You know, if you've got a nuisance plant that's taking over the world kind of thing. Because, yeah, you have to protect the plants that, you know, that are native, or the ones that you want to have in your garden. All right, so we're getting pretty close to the end of the live stream, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the free gift, and also some other ways of working if you feel drawn to this work. So my free gift, which I will post after the webinar in the comments section, is a guided lower world journey where I talk you through it with a rattle to meet a flower or plant spirit. And you can use this journey as many times as you want, or you can do it once, and once you get the hang of it, you can translate it into your own healing or trance state practice. The reason why I do this is because I want to get you used to and comfortable with going into the lower world and talking to the plant people. You can use your own approach after that. And the other thing about it is it's based on a dream that I had many years ago. I've routinely used this practice with great effects, so it's a safe way. But like I said, once you listen to it once, if you decide you don't want to actually do the journey, it will just at least educate you about a good way to enter the lower world and interact with these beings in a safe and helpful way. So that's the free gift. But also, I also have another very exciting project that I'm working on with my sister Kirsten. We have a Patreon project called Shamanic Earth Medicine, which is also the name of our Facebook group. And we do monthly webinars like the one I'm doing today. And we are really excited about offering in one place all the webinars that we do, along with extra content, extra video content that will be only for our Patreon subscribers. And that we hope that our Patreon subscribers will help us to understand what might benefit them the most. So if you like these webinars, you might want to check out our Patreon. We have a link to it in the free gift that I'll be sending out later today. I also have a Facebook group called Shamanic Earth Medicine that some of you are members of. I'd love to see any of you. The only thing that we ask is that you fill out questions when you're joining the group, and there's 2 of them. You can just say that you can answer with any answer you want. We just want to make sure you're not a robot. So, I have a blog and a Facebook business page called Celestial Tree. So let me just see if there's one more question here. Oh, thank you. Yes, I read cards. Natalie, thank you. Yeah, thank you all. I just want to say now, first of all, I want to thank Christina for making this possible for me to share this information with all of you. I love doing this work. It's really fun. And I love seeing people who, many of you already have a very deep relationship with the plant kingdom. So if there's some kind of information in this talk that will help take that to another level, that's exciting. So I want to thank Christina for inviting me here to do this. And also, I just want to thank all of you for your comments and your great energy and your participation, for showing up live. This isn't the most convenient time, and I just appreciate getting to know all of you today. So I am going to read off a few more comments if there are any. I will post that link to the free gift in the comments. And I am also going to go through the comments because I know I missed a lot of your questions or comments, and try to answer them after the webinar. And if for some reason I miss you, or you have a question, please feel free to Facebook messenger me, and I'll try to answer your question that way. But I hope to see you either here in Heart-Centered Spiritual Business Support, in my group Shamanic Earth Medicine, or maybe in the Patreon. And thank you all very, very much. So let me see here. Celestial Tree, what is the name? Thank you. Yeah, that's the name that some people give the Milky Way, the river of stars, that many of the cultures journey like a tree to go to the different worlds that I described earlier in the webinar. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for showing up. And also Victoria. Yeah, wonderful. And like I said, I will get to those questions or comments if I didn't meet them. But I hope what would be the most exciting is if I found out that some of you decided to take a small piece of a plant that you haven't worked with before, or that you have worked with before, and either have a dream or a journey or even a meditation to meet that spirit. That would be a lovely thing. So let's see where I'm at here. I think I'm almost finished. I'll stick around for another minute just to see if there are any more comments or questions. But that's pretty much the extent of plant spirit healing for today, at least. Could you give your group name again? Oh, sure. My group, and the Patreon has the same name, is Shamanic Earth Medicine. And Kirsten, who or at least was watching before, and I are the admins. And just to reiterate, there are 2 questions when you sign up. You can write anything you want, but we need you to answer both of them so we know you're not a robot. Thank you. Thank you. So I hope all of you have a wonderful day. I hope you connect with the plant spirits in a beautiful way. And I hope the plants invite you into the dream of nature. Thank you all.